We'll begin with an update on Israel-Gaza war. The Israeli army has ended its raid of the Ibn Sina hospital complex in the occupied West Bank near Jenin refugee camp, which left at least 14 people injured. Also, Israeli air attacks on Jabalia refugee camp have killed at least 18 people. As the humanitarian situation worsens in the Gaza Strip, international organizations fear the spread of diseases due to lack of clean water and crowded shelters. We have details in this report.
Israel says its troops have found the body of a second woman held hostage by Hamas during a search close to Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza. Noah Maciano, a 19-year-old soldier, was the one of about 240 people kidnapped by Hamas gunmen during the 7th October atrocities, which killed 1,200 people. The body of Yehudat Weiss, who was abducted also during the attack on Israel, was found near Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital on Thursday. The body was located by Forces Brigade 7 that was scanning the area near the hospital. More than 11,500 people have been killed in the territory since Israel began its retaliatory strikes, according to Hamas-run health ministry. Mobile phone and internet services are down because of lack of fuel. Palestinian telecoms companies have complained. Benjamin Netanyahu has admitted Israeli forces have not been successful in minimizing civilian casualties in Gaza, but has also blamed Hamas.
Shouldn't have any, because we're doing everything we can to get the civilians out of harm's way, while Hamas is doing everything to keep them in harm's way. So we send leaflets, we call them. We call them on their cell phones and we say, leave. And many have left, but Hamas tried to stop them at gunpoint and fired at the safe corridors that we provided for the Palestinians. So they don't give a hoot about the Palestinians. They think they're safe in the underground, this messianic, theological, mad cult that is fighting below. And they're saying that, you know, damn the Palestinians above. We don't say that. We do everything we can to have them leave. That's what we're doing. The other thing that I can say is that we'll try to finish that job with minimal civilian casualties. That's what we're trying to do. Minimal.
Colder weather and rain have exacerbated suffering in Gaza. As Palestinians who fled the north of the Gaza Strip towards its south during weeks of the ongoing war say their children are suffering from the cold weather. Displaced Palestinians in the southern Gaza governorates of Rafah and Khan Yunis were struck with cold weather and continuous rain, which drowned their shelter tents. Meanwhile, dozens of protesters blocked traffic for about 2 hours on the Boston University Bridge at the Commonwealth Avenue. The group calls itself If Not Now and says there are a movement of American Jews demanding that Senator Elizabeth Warren support an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza.
It is over until apartheid and occupation have been dismantled.
The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, says that Hamas is endangering everyone by embedding itself with civilians in hospitals, schools, and civilian residences. About 200 Palestinians have been killed in the occupied territory since the 7th October attack on Israel. Arab diplomats are concerned that there could be an explosion of violence in the West Bank that could escalate the conflicts.
And joining us live to discuss the latest on the war is Ejike Okpa, a global affairs analyst. He joins us from the U.S. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
So the United States and other Western countries have repeatedly said that Israel has the right to defend itself. But I want to get your thought on how your assessment of how Israel is going about that defense.
Well, I mean, in the U.S. and the Western world has always held that position. Israel has their rights to defend themselves, just like every other nation and every other people. The unfortunate thing is that the Palestinians have been subjected to all kinds of, treatment, and then when they do something in retaliation or based on the fact that, for all their life they have been caged and meant to live, in a situation that describes, makes it hard for people to understand, and they retaliate, they do something, out of frustration, then the whole world jumps out and that's what's going on. The October 7th attack is very unfortunate, but you can imagine nobody's talked about what led to that October 7th, reaction, because there was an action and then the Palestinians reacted. So Israel has become the litmus test for everybody. If you are in U.S. and then you're running for office, they want you, would you support Israel? Are you behind Israel? If you say no, all of a sudden, you become an enemy of America or an enemy of Israel. And the same thing has gone all over the world. So it makes you wonder, how come this one country out of nearly 200 countries in the world has garnered so much attention that everybody's afraid to speak up and say, you know what, we have to come to a permanent solution. Hamas, of course, is not a formalized military, but, they have their own reasons, whether, right or wrong. They have their own reasons for what it is they are doing. And then Israel, with all their military might, say, hey, we're going to crush these people. But as long as they have been going after them, it tells you one thing: the human spirit is harder to destroy. You may kill some of their leaders, but other people are going to emerge because there's some resentment. There's some hatred. You could see the demonstrations going on in America, in college campuses all over. The Palestinian Americans or those who sympathize with their situation are joining forces. So I'm saying, the world, let's get together. Let's call on Israel. Let's call on Hamas. Can we have a peace conference? Can we, do something so that the innocent civilian lives that are being wasted, it should stop?
And I will get to that peace conference in just a moment, because President Biden has talked about it. But I want to ask you, because there are now talks about war crimes being committed by Israel and Hamas. Do you think that there is evidence of war crimes on both sides?
Of course. With all the killings, what other evidence is anybody looking for? It's a war crime. But the thing is, UN, that has become or is known to be the world umbrella organization that's supposed to prevent stuff like this, what powers do they really have? They don't have any power. Netanyahu is saying, no, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to do this thing for Israel. Netanyahu has become this lion, in the world. He just does whatever he does because he's been armed. He's been supported. If U.S. were to have the backbone and say, stop this, and withdraw their support, I think he will. But the U.S. can do it because you got these Jewish Americans who are very powerful. They use their money. They use the media. And they can crush any politician based on the sort of reaction. Yesterday I was at an event, with Governor of Texas. Some of the state issues that were not even discussed. It was this Israeli something. So it's become a litmus test. It's become the thing that, are you with Israel? If you're not with Israel, you are an enemy of Israel, and that label can destroy any political figure. But it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to have conversation amongst ourselves, enemies and friends alike. We sit down on the table, because at the end of the day, there's 11,000 people that have been killed in Palestinian side, Hamas side, and almost half of that are children. So these are people that have parents, and so are the parents just going to wipe it off and go away? There's going to be resentment. Who knows? 10, 20 years from now, somebody get angry and then they do something. So we need to end this stuff. There is no winner or loser in this. Israel has the military power. They're going, but they are very frustrated, because if they were that military successful or had that intelligence, they should have known that the October 17th was going to happen.
But as I hear you, I understand, from where you're coming, because people have talked about the principle of proportionality or proportional response, and whether what Israel is doing is proportional to what the Hamas attack on October the 7th. But let's not also forget that Hamas also has, close to about, if not more than 200 hostages, from Israel. And Israel is saying release those hostages. But I want to just quote President Joe Biden here, where he presented an unapologetic defense of his refusal to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. He argues that Hamas represents a continuing threat to Israel. I want to get your response to that, and if you see a path, here to a ceasefire and humanitarian pauses.
Again, Joe Biden is running for re-election. He cannot afford to make a statement that will anger, people on the Israeli side or the sympathizers of, Israel's right to defend itself and exist. He cannot afford to do that. Let's be honest with it. So he's going to talk from both sides of his mouth. He's going to try to appease Israel, and then he's going to try to warm up to, the other people, these Palestinians, and say, okay, let's come to an agreement. But I'm just saying, if an American president, whether Biden or anybody, to come up and say, hey, don't do this. I don't know whether he listens to Obama's interview recently, and he's getting a whole lot of flack out of that. Because he's more. They say now he's supporting terrorists. He's all of these things that they use to try to demolish you as a political figure. But the fact remains that people are dying on both sides. Yes, Hamas has the hostages. Well, that's their ace card. That's what they're going to like to leverage in order to get something from Israel or something from the rest of the world. So when you're fighting whether a formalized militaries are doing this or a formalized military with, what they call a terrorist organization, who in their own mind are freedom fighters, they're going to use whatever they can because the rules of the game is not the same thing. So
there is still no justification for holding hostages. Neither is that justification for the more than 11,000 people who have died on the Palestinian side as well. And we're hoping for more conversation, around the ceasefire. Thank you so much for talking to us. As always, Global Affairs Analyst Ejike Okpa, always a pleasure.